Coming up on We Talk News this week.
No taxation without representation. Down with 280E.
One of the leading medical MSOs, MaryMed of Massachusetts, celebrates the 250th year anniversary of the Boston Tea Party by dumping environmentally friendly boxes labeled weed into the Boston Harbor.
No taxation without representation. Down with 280E.
The message remains the same after over 2 centuries.
At MaryMed, we say no more.
Facebook, DBA Meta, eases their advertising restrictions on CBD following Twitter's lead, but there are still some rules for the industry to overcome. Plus, New York City raids an illegal storefront dispensary and shuts down the Empire Cannabis Club. For a day, anyway. Maryland opens up adult use and posts a $20 million first week of legal sales of cannabis. All that and coast-to-coast cannabis news on We Talk News with Elena Pinto. Next.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everyone. I'm Elena Pinto, and this is Weed Talk News, Pro Cannabis Media's weekly news roundup of all the big stories in the nation's fastest growing legal cannabis industry. Right off the top, we usually check in on the federal reform movement in Washington, D.C., but since the promise of getting the safe banking bill approved in the Senate continues to be blocked by that bipartisan rift between Republicans and Democrats, we are going to start right here in the state of Massachusetts. This week, there was a protest of the injustice of the 280E clause of the tax code that bars cannabis companies from writing off regular business expenses at the federal level. There are 16 states who operate legal cannabis industries who have made concessions to their state's tax code for cannabis businesses. 16 of the 23 legal adult use states in the USA are now allowing a break on their state returns, but with cannabis still illegal on the federal level, 280E is crippling this nascent industry. On top of that, each state is allowing some write-offs for employee income, but not all business expenses that every other business in America is exempt from. So why now? For the first time since the legal cannabis movement started, there has been year-over-year decrease in tax revenue from cannabis operations. In 2021, there was $3.86 billion in tax revenue generated, and last year there was only $3.77 billion, despite more states adopting adult use legalization. This is all because cannabis is still a Schedule I product. Well, earlier this year, President Biden asked the DOJ to create a report on descheduling or rescheduling cannabis, and that report is expected to be completed by the end of this year. Once again, our Massachusetts Cannabis Report is sponsored by CNA Stores, and PCM founder Jimmy Young was on hand at the Boston Harbor for the protest that happened this week.
Thanks, Elena. As someone who's a native of the Bay State of Massachusetts and an old history major at Tufts University, I love the city where it all began way back in the 18th century. Now, I was not around for the first Boston Tea Party in that century, and I was thrilled to be witness to the latest Boston Tea Party protest over unfair taxation without representation put on by MaryMed, a multi-state operator that brings to the market Betty's Edibles, Booby's Baked, and Nature's Heritage products.
So what did we do, right? We did our own version of the Tea Party. We called it the Boston 280E THC Party. We stormed a schooner. We went out to the harbor. We screamed for the repeal of 280E, and we tossed weed into the harbor.
Now, was there really weed in those boxes, or it was marked weed? I remember seeing that.
Well, you are talking to a PR guy, so no. It was weed because it was the word weed, but no. In all seriousness. More
importantly, you threw something into the harbor, retrieved it, and brought it back on shore so it doesn't pollute our harbor, right?
Zero cannabis was used in this stunt. Our lawyers would make us say, right? No cannabis was used. No cannabis was sparked. Zero. But and the boxes were empty, sustainable wood, and retrieved immediately. So no harm, no foul.
Unfair taxation may have been at the root of this protest, but sure enough, MaryMed had to deal with the same stigma issues about this plant medicine that many in this industry deal with on a daily basis. 1 hour before the launch, staff from the New England Aquarium played the role of the NIMBY, not in my backyard demonstration, and asked MaryMed to move their protest away from their tourists and sent them down to Battery Wharf.
Our boat happens to be docked next to the aquarium. When the aquarium got wind of what we were doing, they said, look, we have kids here. Do you really want to spread the message of cannabis right next to us? And we're like, come on. Well, we thought we were past this, but we're going to play nice. It's a beautiful day for a boat ride. We'll go out to the water.
Oh, and one final note from the Bay State of Massachusetts. Sure enough, the state set a sales record in June with over $152 million sold last month alone, $5 billion since the market opened in November of 2018. That's the Bay State Cannabis Report, sponsored by CNA Stores. I'm PCM founder Jimmy Young reporting for Weed Talk News. CNA Stores in Massachusetts, a veteran-owned and family-operated dispensary in Amesbury and Haverhill. It has the best selection in the state and a dedication to the community north of Boston.
One of the newest states to open their adult use market recently is Maryland. That state is off to a good start with over $21 million sold in the first week of legal adult use sales. Andrew Behringer is our DC correspondent who checks in weekly on federal reform and the launch of the Maryland market.
Andrew Behringer here reporting from Washington, D.C. for We Talk News. Now on the federal level, a quick update on the SAFE Banking Act. The SAFE Banking Act, a crucial piece of legislation aimed at ensuring a secure banking environment for the cannabis industry, remains in the committee stage as both political parties engage in discussions to bring it to a vote. While progress is being made, a critical issue has emerged requiring attention and resolution. The problem? Democrats are seeking to amend a specific section of the bill, Section 10, as the Republican stands firm on not redoing any aspects of the bill. Now, the issue is that Section 10 of the SAFE Banking Act, as it stands, has sparked a debate among Democrats who argue that it hampers federal regulators' ability to promptly identify and address significant risks associated with certain customers. Senator Jack Reed expressed his concern, stating it would make it more difficult for federal regulators to raise the alarm about the relationships with any customer that presents significant risks to the bank. Now, what's the resolution? Acknowledging that no policy is perfect, it is evident that both political parties need to collaborate closely and ensure the passage of the SAFE Banking Act. As negotiations continue, it is hoped that common ground can be found to address the concerns raised by the Democrats, while also maintaining the integrity of the bill. A united effort is imperative to pass the SAFE Banking Act to help the cannabis industry. Now, in Maryland news, adult use market has officially started, which was first day July 1st. And some of those numbers are in. On the first day alone, Maryland sold $3.5 million of cannabis sales just in the adult use market. $4.5 million if you include medical. And on that first weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, July 4th weekend, $10.4 million total. It is estimated that Maryland in its first year could have up to $275 million worth of sales. Wow. Congratulations, Maryland. Well, that's going to do it for me, Andrew Behringer, in the DC area report for We Talk News. Have a great day.
In the Big Apple of New York City, the illegal market continues to make headlines with their brazen operations all over the city. Now, law enforcement and the governor are starting to try to shut down the illegal or legacy market. Pam Schmiel has our New York City Cannabis Report.
I'm Pam Schmiel, host of the Mary Jane Society podcast with the New York Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. The battle to rid New York City of its unlicensed cannabis market continues. The target this week was the Empire Cannabis Club in Manhattan. The self-proclaimed legal social club model is taking advantage of a loophole in the law that New York State regulators don't recognize. The Empire Cannabis Club claims they are a private club and believe what they are doing is legal. They take a club fee and gift cannabis to their members who join the club. That practice didn't stop police from conducting raids on 3 of their storefronts and shutting them down. But not for long. The Empire Cannabis Club was open the next day, willing to pay the fines in order to continue operations. Many new legal adult states are having and going through the same process in one way or another. And New York Governor Hochul has extended enforcement authority to the New York State Department of Finance, who will now go after sales tax in the unlicensed market. Watch out. That's this week's New York Cannabis Report. I'm Pam Schmiel from the Mary Jane Society podcast for Weed Talk News.
New Hampshire may be the only state in New England that does not have a legal adult use market. But now, if you are a medical patient from Canada or out of state, you can buy your medicine at a New Hampshire medical dispensary. That state has been trying to pass adult use laws for years now, but have been stalled by political paralysis. The newest state in New England, though, to enter into the adult use market legally is Connecticut. Angie Seifert is our correspondent in the Nutmeg State, and here's her Connecticut Cannabis Report.
I'm Angie Seifert from Skip Intro Advisors with the Connecticut Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. Verano opened Zen Leaf Norwich, the company's first social equity joint venture location in Connecticut and 3rd dispensary statewide. Verano's vertical operations encompass CT Pharma, a 217,000 square foot cultivation and processing facility. Including Zen Leaf Norwich, the company plans to open a total of 6 social equity joint venture dispensaries across the state, of course subject to obtaining all approvals, which would raise Verano's total retail footprint to 8 stores statewide. Speaking of new dispensaries and joint ventures with social equity applicants, Connecticut cannabis companies gear up for unions. Though only one cannabis union has officially formed in Connecticut, it's clear that more are soon likely. Connecticut's first cannabis workers union formed in May when workers at Advanced Grow Lab cultivation site in West Hartford voted to unionize. Most of the companies are being solicited by multiple unions at this point. So social equity joint ventures and unions in the same few weeks convey that Connecticut could give residents a steady career in the industry. Finally, Connecticut residents are now legally allowed to grow cannabis for adult use. Residents can possess 3 mature and 3 immature live cannabis plants at any one time, with a cap of 12 in any single household. Residents could give away cannabis as a gift, including seeds. All cannabis plants must be grown indoors and may not be visible from the street. That's the Connecticut Cannabis News Report for this week. I'm Angie Seifert from Skip Intro Advisors, reporting for Weed Talk News.
The plight of the challenges for people who have applied for a social equity license in Illinois continues to be frustrating. Only 27 of the 192 social equity applicants for licenses have been awarded so far, and a lottery held this week is supposed to move things along. Thomas Howard of Cannabis Legalization News has our Illinois Cannabis Report for this week.
Hey, I'm Tom with Weed Talk News, here with some Illinois news that's hot off the presses. Today, Illinois had its lottery for 55 social equity licenses, and they've all been awarded. We won. And by we, I mean, you can tune into Cannabis Legalization News with me and Miggy on Sunday to see the whole show, because, like, we got awarded a license. And is it difficult to get these things operational? Yes. Especially considering that social equity is in play. But if you have the right incubator, the right team, the right plan to go about it, it becomes easier to get open. However, economic constraints are what they are, and they are kind of expensive to get open where the regulations are high. However, in Illinois, 55 new conditional licenses have been awarded through lottery. It's very early stages. They aren't done yet. And out of the 192 that have been issued so far since Illinois legalized 4 years ago, 27 are in operation. And that's one of the problems with the social equity programs. failure to launch. But that is our update from Illinois for January 13th, 2023. Back to you in the studio, Elena.
Another vibrant Midwest medical-only market for cannabis is in Ohio. The issue for that state is overabundance, or just too much inventory for their in-state consumers. So what do the smart people from Ohio do? Well, they go to Missouri or another neighboring state to get their weed. And since Ohio only has a medical program, the depth of the industry is still early. But with crops outgrowing demand, the price of cannabis is going up, forcing medical patients to cross state borders for their medicine. Nevada is probably too far a drive from Ohio, but that state introduced some reform measures to their already existing laws. The founder of the Women in Cannabis Expo, Brooke Westlake, is our new Nevada correspondent, and here's her first report for Weed Talk News.
I am Brooke Westlake of Women in Cannabis Expo, and here is this week's Nevada Cannabis News Update, Weed Talk News. First up, we have SB 277 did pass legislation, is now Nevada law. So what this means is the daily purchase limit has gone up from 1 ounce to 2.5 ounces. And for concentrate, it used to be an eighth, and now you can get a quarter of concentrate. That law also included dispensaries not having to double pay for licenses, such as a medical license on top of a dispensary license. Next up on our Nevada update list is last November, we had 40 people that were announced for potential licensees for the cannabis consumption lounges in Nevada. As of June, 3 of those licensees have been announced, and that includes Planet 13, Thrive, and Soul Cannabis. The last thing that they will need to complete is getting the appropriate jurisdiction approval. That is the update for Nevada. I'm Brooke Westlake with Women in Cannabis Expo, and that is your We Talk News for today.
In New Jersey this week, quite a few new licenses were handed out, and Jill Goldsberry tells us about ways your employed might be able to tell if you are under the influence or not. So here's Jill's New Jersey Cannabis Report for this week.
Hello, welcome. I'm Jill Goldsberry with We Talk News New Jersey, and we are back with the news. So let's get into it. New Jersey's legal weed regulators have said that within 1 year, the Garden State will be a $1 billion market. And within that year, 100 companies have been approved for the state license to open a cannabis retail store. Jersey City just made a major breakthrough by getting its first retail dispensary. Is going to be a medical dispensary though, and it's the city's first. As I said, it's a medicinal dispensary opening its doors this week at 220 Broadway, and it's called Ripped Dispensary in an industrial area in the shadow of the Polanski Skyway. If you know the area, you'll know the Polanski Skyway and what it's famous for. Google it, look it up. Brands you'll find on hand include Cookies and Miss Grass, to name a few. And they will be on hand. So they're having their grand opening today, July 14th. So stop by and check them out, 220 Broadway. In other news, New Jersey Cannabis Regulatory Enforcement Assistance and Marketplace Modernization Act, otherwise known as CREMA, mandates the creation of workplace impairment recognition and the expert that will be under that guise known as the WIRE. This concept will be responsible for the approach in the dynamic tension that exists between the maintenance of a drug-free workplace and the exercise of employees' rights to use cannabis outside of the job. However, the current regulatory landscape puts the creation or use of WIRE on hold. There's a flaw in this depending on several factors. If cannabinoid metabolites are in your body, they can be detected for up to 45 days, obviously without impairment. So this can be a problem in the future, but we'll see what happens. The litmus test currently is if someone is suspected to be under the influence, they will base that on the observation of your behavior and your performance. So we'll see what happens with that. I'm Jill Goldsberry with We Talk News. Thanks for watching. We'll be back next week.
all the cannabis from Europe and from Canada. We have two international correspondents. Lex Pelger tells us about Albania moving forward with a medical plan, and in Canada is Debbie Facey. Here's our international roundup of cannabis news with Lex and Debbie.
I'm Lex Pelger from White Whale Creation with this week's European Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. In the United Kingdom, a move towards healthcare sanity. A patient with stage 4 bowel cancer has become the first person to have the cost of their prescription for medical cannabis flower covered by the National Health Service. When the patient first persuaded his general practitioner to apply for an individual funding request, it was denied, and the panel suggested trying nabilone, a synthetic chemical cousin to THC. But when the nabilone did not alleviate the nausea symptoms from his chemotherapy treatments, a team from the Zerenia Medical Cannabis Clinic helped him submit a new funding request. And in a synchronicity, the request was granted on April 20th. Otherwise known as International Cannabis Awareness Day. Other good news comes in from Albania. The Council of Ministers has approved a draft law on the medical use of cannabis. After a national vote where 61% supported medical cannabis, the Ministry of Health created a potential regulatory framework. Under the proposal, a national agency for the control of cannabis will be created and the regulations on permits for production and processing will be established. And finally, at the EU level, the European Monitoring Center for Drugs and Drug Addiction released their European Drug Report 2023. They find that cannabis remains by far the most commonly consumed illicit drug in Europe. They estimate that 15% of adults have used it in the last year, and 1.3% are daily or almost daily users. The country with the highest percentage of cannabis users is here in France, ironic because this government hates the plant. Meanwhile, Spain accounts for 2/3 of cannabis seizures, ironic because they have a tolerated system of cannabis social clubs. That's the European Cannabis Report for this week. For more on the science side, see my newsletter on Substack, Cannabinoids and the People. I'm Lex Pelger from White Whale Creations, reporting for Weed Talk News.
Our Canadian correspondent with Weed Talk News, Debbie Facey, with the Canadian Toke of the Week. What we have this week in Canada is Vancouver has now proposed for Ottawa to look into creating a unified and a more effective way when it comes to creating the pre-rolls that most of our Ontario consumers are consuming. This will not only make it more of a cost effective, but it would also allow most of the consumers to have a nice clean smoke. What we also have is the healthcare program actually donating $1.4 million to the alcohol substitution plan that Victoria BC University, which is located in Vancouver, BC, is deciding to implement and to further discuss when it comes to substituting alcohol for cannabis. Last but not least, what we also have is the decision of taking away the selling cap or the selling responsibility cap that most Manitobians had to be paying when it came to having and operating their stores. This is something that they have now implemented and is going to be going forward within the next few weeks. Once again, this is your Canadian correspondent with this week's Canadian Toke. Peace.
Just in case you've been out of it for the past week, let's talk about what happened in the state of Vermont this week. Historic flooding has devastated whole communities, and the state is now prepping for more storms as this incredible weather continues from coast to coast. Our green nurse in Vermont is Jessie Lindolan, and she has the storm's impact on the cannabis market and growing industry in the Green Mountain State, sponsored by Canatrol.
I'm Jessie Lindolan from Vermont Cannabis Nurses, and this is the Weed Talk News Vermont Report. This past week, Vermonters have seen historic and catastrophic rains, leading to detrimental flooding. Entire cannabis farms, manufacturing facilities, and retailers has been desecrated and are working to regroup as Vermont continues to get more storms. Vermont Growers Association has started a cannabis industry flood relief fund. Cannabis retailers of Vermont are working with the Main Street Flood Relief Fund in the city of Montpelier, which had been completely underwater. Green Mountain Patients Alliance is working to help provide cannabis medicine and plants to patients who have been affected. The Vermont community is rallying together, from farmers donating plants to affected farmers, industry workers pitching in to help clean up numerous stores and facilities, and patients helping patients. Thank you to all those volunteering and supporting one another. We're sending positive thoughts and love to all those affected, and know that together we are Vermont strong. That's the Vermont Report for Weed Talk News. I'm Vermont's cannabis nurse, Jesse Lynn Dolan.
The Vermont Cannabis Report is supported by another Green Mountain business, Cannatrol, winner of High Times Best Dry Cure System. Check them out at cannatrols.com.
You know the saying, if at first you don't succeed, try and try again. Well, legislators in Pennsylvania are trying once again to pass an adult use law with bipartisan support. And here's Claudia Post with this week's Pennsylvania report.
I'm Claudia Post from Scarlet Express, and I'm here in the Keystone State, Pennsylvania, reporting for Weed Talk News. A pair of Pennsylvania senators introduced new bipartisan legislation on July the 6th to legalize adult use cannabis in the Keystone State. Senators Sharif Street and Dan Laughlin filed a Senate Bill 846 to legalize cannabis for adults 21 and older. The proposal also includes social equity and expungement provisions. Industry experts see Philadelphia's slightly delayed entry into the cannabis market and relatively low numbers of dispensaries, even after a half a decade, as part of the trend that's left the city underserved as a result of strict zoning requirements in the medical marijuana law. As the new frontier edges forward, the reality with Harrisburg needs to seriously consider recreational legalization. The city must move forward with new restrictions. Two city council members, Republican Brian O'Neill and Democrat Curtis Jones, recently sponsored a bill that would use zoning overlays to block existing dispensaries from converting to recreational sales in the future. This zoning bill is short-sighted and would be a hindrance to diverse applicants and small businesses interested in serving their own communities. Laws like this really stand to limit access for folks like that to enter the market. The legalization currently awaits signature on the desk of Mayor Jim Kenney. It's unclear what he'll do with this one. Well, that's a wrap from Pennsylvania. I'm Claudia Post from Scarlet Express, and I'll be back next week to talk about what's hot and what's not in Pennsylvania. Until then, have a fabulous week.
And finally, tonight, do you refer to Facebook as Meta or Facebook? Well, chances are you've heard of one or the other at this point. So Facebook, or Meta, has not been too cannabis friendly over the years and during this reform movement, but that too might be changing. There is a new policy about advertising on that platform if you are a CBD manufacturer in a legal state. The announcement that they are changing their official policy from hemp and related products to CBD and related products. So yes, there are some stringent guidelines though, but Meta and or Facebook will be happy to take your advertising dollars if you qualify. So you have to be certified with legit script, get written permission from Meta, and comply with applicable local laws as required, or established industry codes and guidelines. Oh, and you can't target anyone under the age of 18 with your message. But besides all that, you can now pay Meta to advertise your product. By the way, Pro Cannabis Media will not put any of those restrictions on your ad if you want to take advantage of our reach. That's Weed Talk News for this week. Remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there, so use it responsibly. I'm Elena Pinto. We'll see you next time.
Brandon Jones, Missouri Cannabis Report is brought to you by Baker Brands, a curated B2B marketplace for head shops and dispensaries. It's a whole new world of weed out there, isn't it? Everyone is learning new ways to titrate, ingest, consume, imbibe, and engage with this plant medicine we call cannabis. Hi, I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media and the host of In the Weeds, and once in a while, the really live business cannabis talk show we call Green Rush on Friday afternoons from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern. I've been a medical patient in Massachusetts for almost 10 years now. I remember my first trip to a dispensary just outside of Boston, and I told the bud tender I didn't want to smoke it anymore. So I tried edibles, then tinctures, then vaping, and now if I'm going to smoke, I only use the Weedjits filtration system. What? The Weedgets.com, Weedgets, that's weed, W-E-E-D, G-E-T-S.com, is where you'll find the planet's coolest product.
Both cool the smoke from 1,300 degrees to just 90 into your lungs. Plus, the maze pipe and pre-roll filters get rid of all the gunk that you just don't want in your lungs if you can help it.
Add in the code of PCMTV and you get 15% off. So just go to Weedgets.com and check out the best way to enjoy a cooler smoke with less coughing and hacking and more peace of mind. All that resin and tar is collected in the polyurethane filters that are easy to clean with soap, water, and a few Q-tips. Your lungs will thank you, and so will I.
We are a cultivation through to consumption lifestyle brand for the cannabis industry. Of course, the crown jewel in our product line is the Armoire home grow system. So now with Green Goddess Supply, we can take you everywhere from growing it in the Armoire right through to storing it, consuming it, rolling it, storing it, you name it, A to Z. Our goal is to enable everybody and anybody anywhere to be able to produce their own organic flower quickly, easily, discreetly, and inexpensively.
You would think that it is. However, there's quite a bit of debate right now in the accounting industry when it relates to cannabis with this exact question. I'm part of a few different networking groups that are solely accountants for cannabis companies. And there's been quite a bit of back and forth in those communities and discussion regarding whether 280E, if it went away, if the administration legalized cannabis or took it off of Schedule 1, what would happen? And it could go either way right now. The debate is it can make the accountant's life much easier. That's what a lot of the inexperienced accountants are saying right now, it seems, whereas the accountants that have been in this industry for a while and have gone through the same thing that happened with hemp a few years ago are saying that it actually will make lives more difficult, because when hemp became declassified a while back, the accounting became more complicated.
Safetiva Labs in Westfield is fast becoming the #1 testing lab for cannabis in Western Massachusetts. Safetiva understands the importance for accurate on-time test results for your product. That's why their current compliance panel turnaround time is less than 2 days. That's Safetiva Labs in Westfield. For more information, go to safetiva.com. The Vermont Cannabis Report is supported by another Green Mountain business, Cannatrol, winner of High Times Best Dry Cure System. Check them out at cannatrolls.com.